We were all wondering what is going to happen with the Cowboys coaching staff after the 2024 NFL season, and recent wins might make the picture a lot more blurry. So let's get into what Jerry Jones said about it on 105.3 The Fan. What's up, Cowboys Nation? Let's get straight into it. Jerry Jones talked to the radio today, and he had a couple of interesting comments on the coaching staff situation. Mike McCarthy playing out or coaching out his contract. He is not under contract beyond the 2024 season, and we're only 3 games away from the end of it. And we still don't know what the plans are for the Cowboys as far as retaining Mike McCarthy or not. And on Sunday, after a Mike Zimmer defensive performance where the unit ended up taking the ball away from Bryce Young 4 times while sacking the quarterback 6 times, and just that coupled with the whole notion that the defense has been playing better and better, particularly since Micah Parsons returned, has had us wondering on Sunday, what does Mike Zimmer mean to Mike McCarthy in terms of job security? Because if you want to keep Mike Zimmer around and he's giving you a few reasons to do so, then maybe the easiest way to go about it would be to keep Mike McCarthy around as well. Well, Jerry Jones was asked about it on 105.3 The Fan. He was asked specifically about the whole, idea of, are they tied together or not, McCarthy and Zimmer. So let's get to listening to what Jerry Jones had to say about it on 105.3 The Fan, because he had some interesting comments.
Kind of tied together?
Well, in a way, I do, and especially after the last ball games. And but I think you're seeing the best of Mike Zimmer, and maybe I shouldn't say that. You're beginning to see some of the best, but maybe the best is still ahead of us. But he's been real impressive now, putting that defense together with the attrition that we've had with availability with our players. So I give him that. Mike, I don't know how you cannot say that his team has shown that they'll handle adversity, and he can get you there with the injury situation impacting the availability of those players. I hate to keep repeating that, but it's so obvious. And yet have that team playing at the level it's playing. So, I give them both high grades this year.
Jerry Jones, brought to you by your North.
So there is so much to take away from those few seconds of Jerry Jones talking about the coaching staff in Dallas. Listen, let's start with the Mike Zimmer conversation. And let it be noted that he does say, I do, right? He says, in a way, I do view them as being together. Now, that could mean many things, but it's clear that Jerry Jones understands where the question is coming from. If you bring in a different head coach, it's going to be a little bit difficult to be like, the only condition is that you already have a defensive coordinator in place. And for Cowboys fans, if they hire a head coach who is already allowing the front office to pick the defensive coordinator, it would be fair to wonder, is this a head coach that is really going to change how things are done in Dallas? For as good as Mike Zimmer has been, I think that would be an interesting and totally fair observation to make. But what intrigues me the most about what Jerry said is the part about this being the best from Zimmer, and then kind of correcting himself and being like, well, not necessarily the best, because it could be better, right? We could still be, the best from Mike Zimmer might still be ahead of us. And that's maybe a little bit of a telling quote. Maybe not, right? There are still 3 more games left to go. But my question is, ahead when, right? Are we talking about what the Cowboys defense is going to do versus the Buccaneers, Eagles, and Commanders in the final stretch of the season? Or is there a true preference from the Cowboys front office as far as 2025 goes to keep Mike Zimmer as defensive coordinator for the team? It's clear they like him. Jerry Jones is leaving us with no doubts about that. And to be fair, the Zimmer defense has been improving significantly over the last few weeks. I think ever since Micah Parsons returned and you got some other key pieces back, like Deron Bland, even though you're now losing Trevon Diggs, and with the rise of the Marvin Overshown, who unfortunately is out for the season and potentially for 2025, you've been seeing some of the vision for this defense come to life. You're seeing Maurice Leofau, even who is stepping in for the Marvin Overshown and was publicized as a Mike Zimmer draft pick for the most part in 2024, excuse me. You're seeing him step up. You're seeing him have a big role. You're even seeing some improvement on Massey Smith. I'm not saying Massey Smith is going to be the star that the Cowboys maybe hoped he was going to after they picked him in the first round, but he has improved. Ozo Digisuwa is doing his thing. You're seeing Chauncey Golston and Carl Lawson improve as the season goes on. All of these things matter when you are evaluating a coach. So I think that, to be fair, Mike Zimmer is doing a good job for the Cowboys. And if you're just talking about him and isolating him from everything that it could mean for the rest of the coaching staff, bringing him back in 2025 does not sound like a bad idea. Again, when you take everything into context and you're like, well, but is the head coach that lets that happen, instead of bringing him his own staff, is he really gonna represent a change as to how things are done in Dallas, where the front office has such a big voice in the football decisions? Maybe it wouldn't be great for that narrative, but Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator, is doing a good job in 2024, and we gotta acknowledge that. It started off very rocky, and some of the things that were pretty rocky were, for example, the run fits, and you saw a lot of lack of gap integrity from the Cowboys, and consistently you could find players that were out of position, something that even players were calling out, right? Micah Parsons early in the season was complaining about teammates wanting to be Superman. Jordan Lewis was complaining about the lack of details, but maybe as the season has gone on, players have adjusted to Mike Zimmer's scheme. Mike Zimmer's scheme has adjusted to players as well, and little by little, they're finding answers. Now, make no mistake about it, there are still serious question marks for this defense. Like, for example, if you were to face the Ravens again, the Lions again, the 49ers again, and the Cowboys actually had a decent game plan in Santa Clara earlier in the season. But what would the plan? What would the defense look like? Because the Cowboys, it seems to me, have been better as of late, mostly because they've gotten themselves into positions where they can do what they do best, which is rush the passer. But if a team like the Ravens wants to run the football down their throats, I wonder what that looks like on a week-to-week basis, right? Now, granted, there have been a lot of injuries, which also plays into the evaluation of this defense moving forward, especially with Overshown and Diggs out, and of course, DeMarcus Lawrence does not seem to be on a trajectory to come back anytime soon. He's not playing next Sunday, and after that, you've got 2 more games. He's about to hit free agency, so at this point, I honestly would be surprised if he ends up playing at all, but we'll see. So that's from Mike Zimmer. Now, with the Mike McCarthy comments from Jerry Jones, I kind of think that we're getting some confirmation on some suspicions that we already had. When the injuries started to pile up, you could kind of feel that be a positive for McCarthy, ironically, because early in the season, we knew about the roster build. We knew that the Cowboys didn't spend a lot of money in the offseason, and we knew that McCarthy was, I don't want to say he was being set up, though maybe he was, but he was definitely being put in an awkward position, right? So we knew early in the year the conversation was going to be along the lines of, well, what does McCarthy's play calling look like? Is he building upon a second-team All-Pro season for Dak and a first-team All-Pro season for CD? Is Jake Ferguson going to be elevated to the next level? Is this happening? Is that happening? But it was mostly about his job as a play caller and a game planner, obviously. And when the injuries started piling up, you could feel it. You could feel the conversation was gonna end up taking a turn of, well, how is the team handling the losing record? How is the team fighting for McCarthy, if it is fighting at all? How is this team adapting to the injuries? Because, oh man, so many injuries for the Cowboys this year. Talking about Pro Bowlers, starters, and all of that. And sure enough, you could just hear it just now on Jerry's voice, right? Earlier in the year, Jerry's comments to 105.3 The Fan were literally, we're calling bad plays and we're designing bad concepts. Do you remember that? That was this season. That happened in September or October. I'm not sure, but it just happened. I think that was after the Lions game when it felt like we were hitting rock bottom. And at the time, we were like, well, sure, he's right, but also he built a mediocre team. And now the conversation is, well, the team is still fighting, and technically they're winning because they're 3-1 over the last 4 ball games. And their one loss to the Cincinnati Bengals was a muff punt away from being a win. So there's a very real scenario where the Cowboys are 4-0 in their last 4. And suddenly the conversation is, well, the coaching staff is doing great adapting to the amount of injuries that we're facing. And all of that is true. But you got to start wondering if that's going to bail out McCarthy, who was coming into the 2024 NFL season on the hot seat. And it really might, after listening to the shift in tone from the Cowboys front office just in general. It sure sounds like McCarthy's sticking around because of the culture, because of the locker room attitude, and lately because of the way that they're overcoming, quote unquote, injuries. It might really happen. But I also think that we're getting some confirmation that, hey, Mike Zimmer's rise as DC might end up helping Mike McCarthy out a lot, because his front office might just look at the Cowboys and be like, hey, we've got a decent team right now. What about running it back? Because if we want to keep Zimmer around, the Cowboys front office might think we might as well keep McCarthy as well. And Jerry Jones did just say, in a way, I do see them being tied together. So we'll see what this looks like later in the year and later in the season specifically. For now, though, it will be it for me tonight here on the show. And I'll see you again tomorrow with more thoughts on the Cowboys. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. For now, though, bye-bye.